It says we're going. You're live. Hello.
Oh, hello. Right, we've got to be professional now. Good evening, everyone.
Hello. No. So what we need to do first. Is play the tune, which you won't be able to hear.
Is it half past yet? I can hear it. That's wonderful. If I talk over it, will that ruin the effect?
Well, there we go. So, hello, all three of you. No, actually, was that 12? Oh, look, we're buffering. That's not very good. Welcome to Something Who Live, which is something a bit exciting. We've taken our podcast and turned it into a live show so that our vast audience of several people can follow along as we're recording. Unfortunately, this new arrangement on YouTube means that you've got to look at us while you listen. But you can always, look away to one side if you like, or maybe if you wait to see if we post a version on the actual podcast feed, that might work too. But on the plus side, it gives you the opportunity to interact with us, and we'll be keeping an eye on the viewer comments as we go along. So for our live show, we're trialling a different and more spontaneous format, but still relies on our usual remit of comparing stories from the old and new series. But before we get into that, I have to introduce to you my guests tonight, both stars of the smash hit Doctor Who Missing Episodes podcast. and they're no strangers to Something Who. It's our regular contributor, Paul.
Hello.
Yeah. Hi, Paul. And our that's fine. No. And our special guest, Tim.
Hello.
I know that you've long hankered after being a special guest, Tim. You were somewhat miffed when Jack Rayner was billed as special guest and you were just guest. So
well, I contributed so much more to fandom than Jack Rayner. So
yeah.
And by the way, Paul, I want you to know that you're no less special than Tim.
Well, there are a lot of meanings to that word, so I'll take it as a compliment, whichever way you meant it. Yeah. I think Tim also has long hankered a desire to do a live podcast, and I'm blaming him for this, whether it works well or or if I crash and burn in my little window at the bottom there. But Tim, thank you. Thanks, mate.
Paul and I might not gel as well as we do, because normally, of course, we're hunkered down in our secret Missing Episodes bunker.
We are.
But we're locked out at the moment because Paul lost the keys. So we are currently in our own, respective domestic residences.
I've had to blur out the background of my personal respective domestic residence because it's top secret. I don't want anyone knowing where I live because. Oh no, it's gone. Damn. Phew, that was close. Nobody saw that, did they?
Has it died?
Blimey. No, I just showed off my bookshelf.
50 Shades of Grey on your bookshelf.
Shush! I was more worried. Could you see the shelf with all the missing episodes? No, you couldn't see that. No. You couldn't see it because it doesn't exist. Don't worry. No, there's nothing to see here. There's nothing to not see here.
I have a nasty suspicion that we are not going out as live as we think we are.
Do you think anything's happening at all, Richard?
The image that is on the YouTube thingy is not moving all that much, which is disappointing to say the least. Try that. It's okay. Start streaming.
It's like 1892 all over again. I can see things.
Right, I think we may now once again be moving, and it looks to me as if I don't know that might actually work.
Oh,
Yeah, it looks so. No, it's gone.
Oh, so it has.
Now we've got a picture of your desktop.
Oh, how
God.
tedious. Okay, is that any better?
If I was Stephen Moffat, I'd make a hilarious joke about your browser history.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
But I'm not, and I won't.
Right.
What?
Let me go back to the top. So, hello everybody. You heard most of my introduction. You heard me introducing both of my guests. We got very close to the point where we were going to start, and I think it's probable that now would be a good opportunity for me to discuss the actual format. So, I have a phone with a magic spreadsheet, and that spreadsheet will select randomly one story from the classic series and one from the new, and each of us will then take it in turns to discuss those stories picked at random and try and find a spurious link between them. And while we're doing that, the others will get the opportunity to pass comment and possibly drop in the odd anecdote of their own. I mean, we did have an hour. We were a little bit less than that now, but we hope to get around about 3 or 4 times. So I hope that all makes sense. And I guess without further ado, I say without further ado because naturally my phone has now taken the opportunity to be to sort of join the general theme of the evening and be.
Do you want to go first, Richard? I'll give you one.
Go on then.
Right, Richard. Can you discourse for a number of minutes on the Caves of Androzani?
Yes.
And its New Who counterpart, the Pyramid at the End of the World.
Well, one of those stories I know rather better than the other. I suppose that the key thing about Caves of Androzani was that the first time round I missed episode 2, and I was absolutely frustrated about that. It was a Friday night, and I happened to be watching Norman Wisdom. There was a Norman Wisdom film on the telly. We were watching it as a family, and I quite enjoyed it. And then round about 7:30, when it occurred to me that I ought to have been watching Doctor Who, and that I'd missed it, and not only had I missed it, but it hadn't recorded, and that was it gone forever. I was a bit miffed. I mean, episode 2 perhaps not the key one, but nonetheless, not really one that you'd want to miss either. So for many years, I had episodes 1, 3, and 4, which I watched, almost endlessly on video without the benefit of episode 2. And I think I've probably still only watched it a couple of times, so I can't tell you very much about that one. But the rest of them I really enjoyed. I think it's a cracking story. Obviously, Davison's last, a little bit of Baker at the end. Nice effort from Graham Harper. It's a cracking story, which I'd recommend to anyone. Pyramid at the End of the World, I have to say, is one of those stories that I've only seen once. And the once that I saw it, there's a pyramid, right? There's there's a number of armies that are descending on it, and eventually it's left to Clara. To Bill to make some kind of a choice on behalf of the world to stop something from happening, as I recall. And it goes right in the end. But in so doing, it ends up the Doctor ends up in trouble. So on the one hand, everyone's saved, but the Doctor isn't. It's in the middle of that Monk trilogy, which I can't say I really greatly enjoyed. And this was probably the worst of them. But it had its nice moments. I'm trying to remember. Was it a real place? Was it something like Turkmenistan, or did they just make one up? I can't really remember now. Those two. Link between the two. There's a bit of outside broadcast in each. There's, it's a kind of, both of them look a bit like a quarry, for an alien world. But you could say that about most locations in Doctor Who. there's not really much else that I can say that compares pretty much between the two. I'd say,
I have a link.
Go on
Richard.
then.
Caves of Androzani was after a story that was filmed in Lanzarote,
Mhm.
and I was in Lanzarote when I watched the Pyramid at the End of the World.
Oh,
Richard, how could
Splendid.
you not have known that? Oh, what?
Richard, can I just interrupt by saying there's a guy called Mac
yeah,
who I suspect is someone acting under a nom de plume.
yeah.
And he said, Richard looks really like a guy who works in a cafe I always used to have lunch in.
Yeah.
It's really distracting. Can you do something about it?
Yeah.
I
I
well,
suggest,
The cafe might have been in the Northwest.
if
is there a setting to blur your face rather than the background? Perhaps that would help. That would really help Mac out.
yeah. Well, I mean, I can't unless I'm yet to go back in time in the future and work in that cafe. I don't think I'm the same person who actually worked in the cafe. If the person in the cafe is about 2 meters tall, then I suppose it could possibly be the case. Otherwise, I think we're probably
He wants you to obscure your features somehow.
yeah. Well,
Moustache or
A
yeah.
thicker moustache.
yeah. Very good. Have you got any addition to add,
Oh,
Paul, to that?
I'm
particular
just so glad I
combination?
didn't. I'm so glad I didn't get the Pyramid at the End of the World because, I think it's not given too much away to say we're all a bit worried that we might fall down on our knowledge of the news, some of the news series episodes. I had no idea that was the name of an episode, and I'd almost completely blanked that one out of my mind. I would have thought it was the last one, which I see is called The Lie of the Land. So yeah, dodged a bullet there.
Yeah. Well,
Oh.
Tim, on a similar theme, I have for you the Android Invasion and Extremis.
Oh,
Is that the other half of
Astonishingly, yes.
you do know I've just spent my entire anecdote for that pairing of stories.
Oh, what a shame.
still got 54 seconds left.
Well, you can start with the Android Invasion if you like.
I don't think it's always necessary to. I think sometimes we overthink and dwell too much on story titles and the contents of an individual story, don't we? The Android Invasion, Terry Nation. Is it Terry Nation's last contribution? No, it's not his last contribution, is it? Because he did Destiny of the Daleks. It's a funny one, the Android Invasion, because it's always sort of jarred with me as being in a really excellent flow and build up from seasons 12 to 13 to 14. And I just can't really get on with it, not least because of the conceit that I don't really buy that the astronaut Crayford. Is it Crayford?
Crayfish.
Crayfish.
Yeah.
Crayford
Charles
could
Crayfish.
not realise that his eye is missing.
Hmm.
It always feels a little bit cheap as well because it hasn't got the brig in it,
Hmm.
and it's got this other character, Colonel Morris or whatever he's called, in there. And I think it's probably good, but it's one of those which suffer from being relative to what it's surrounded by. But I know other people rate it incredibly highly. It's got some iconic moments, and it's got some great scene setting, and it's got some effective things, in the pub. Unfortunately, the Sarah android is probably a bridge too far in terms of how things stand up today. But it's okay. I think it suffers from what it's surrounded by, but probably in the context of mid Tom Baker, or indeed a lot of what came later, it's jolly good. And what was the other one?
Extremis.
Extremis. Now, there's a funny thing about that.
Yeah.
Somewhere in the Atlantic Ocean, there is a series of islands, a family of islands called the Canary Islands.
Wow.
And one of those islands is very famous for its volcanic
Volcano.
volcano. It's volcanic volcano. And would you believe it? I was on holiday in Lanzarote when that two-parter went out. So I was sat in a little rented villa, and I watched it live from Lanzarote, which by complete coincidence is where they filmed not only Planet of Fire,
Yes.
which happened some 30 years earlier, but also the Moon Egg episode.
Yes. Whose name you remember. Clearly, I'm sure. Kill the Moon.
It's not called Moon Egg.
It's Kill the Moon, is it not?
Kill the Moon. Yeah.
Which amazingly is only 22 episodes before Extremis. I can see why you thought that was worth pointing out.
Yeah.
What I can tell you is that there was some someone heavily involved in the missing episode scene at the time who fancied himself as a bit of a source, like a journalist. He had a source, and he told me that the mummies that appeared in these pyramids were actually the Mondasian Cybermen.
Ah, wow. What a channel, a hotline to the...
And I received that very message when I was in Lanzarote.
Wow. Well, that's top anecdote. Have you got any connections between the two stories?
Of course I have, Richard. Of course, I don't come onto Something Who, which links an old story and a new story, without A, having exceptional knowledge of all Doctor Who stories, and B, being able to draw parallels between stories. And the parallel I would like to draw is that this is probably the only combination of two stories, classic and new, for which no parallels can be drawn at all.
Are we scoring this? Did I say that we should drop the scoring aspect? I take that back, because I'm just going for a challenge here.
Go on then.
Unless I've completely forgotten what story I'm talking about.
Yeah.
The whole of Extremis is set within a virtual reality alternative version of the planet Earth.
Yeah.
And the Android Invasion is also set on an alternate version of a mock-up. Both of them are where the aliens have created a mock-up of the planet Earth to hone their plans. You couldn't get two more similar stories.
But then
Thank you and good night.
Therefore, you are invalidating my point. Which I didn't think we were doing, Paul.
We made it.
It's entertaining. Well, I think it's only fair, Tim, that you should be allowed to pick two stories now at random, of course.
Just press it once.
Who am I setting? Who am I?
Paul is the one who hasn't yet gone.
Oh,
hello.
Still my beating heart.
Hello. We have story number 84, The Brain of Morbius.
Oh, yes.
Right.
Versus story 235, The Angels Take Manhattan.
Oh. Oh. By the way, I really like the Android Invasion.
Keep looking down.
Have you got Jean-Luc Picard's program guide in your lap there?
I'm making notes, but I should probably be making them to the side of the screen somewhere so that I do it unobtrusively. Oh dear. Brain of Morbius. Well, we're still in season 13, aren't we? Which could give me a chance to talk about. Some people do say that it's the season with the most consistent atmosphere, other than Android Invasion. But I think it's certainly the most consistent in terms of ripping off Hammer horror. Almost every story in that season has a very particular debt to pay to a classic film or literary work in the Gothic genre, apart from Android Invasion. But on the other hand, the tone is up and down, because some of them are playful in the way that I like my Doctor Who, and some of them, like Planet of Evil, are incredibly boring, which is why Planet of Evil for me will always be the out. I am going to talk about Brain of Morbius in a minute. I think it's probably the story that gets the combination of those two elements just right. It has the darkness and the 6:30 p.m. adult quality that Hinchcliffe was going for in spades, just as much as, say, the Seeds of Doom or whatever.
Mhm.
But it also is very, very, very funny. Philip Maddock makes it with his performance, and if you think that Robert Holmes originally wanted to replace that character with a robot, because no, hang on, Terrence Dicks originally wanted that character to be a robot.
Mhm.
Well, it might have made more sense to him. It might have been his original conceit, and he might have thought that replacing it with a mad scientist was undermining his clever twist. But on the other hand, it wouldn't have been anywhere near as funny. Can you imagine Philip Maddock being dressed up as a robot, stomping around with electronic treatment on his voice? No, you don't want that. You want Philip Maddock as Solon, shooting Kondo in the guts. Now, what was the other one? The Angels Take Manhattan. That's what you want.
Yeah.
Angels Take Manhattan. Yeah, that was the Angels do slightly suffer, don't they? It's not a hot take. Anyway, most people think that they suffer from diminishing returns every time they appear. I mean, Blink to me is a work of genius. The what's the next one? Flesh and Stone is a very good story in itself, but I think I like everything about it except the new traits that it brings to the Angels. I don't really think all that business about suddenly being able to appear in TV screens and that which what's the mystical saying they use to justify that? That's which something about the body of an angel becomes an angel.
Oh yes. Yeah.
This is more like a step back towards the original creepy graveyard origins of the Angels, isn't it? And the time travel mechanics.
Yeah.
I've not watched it that often because I wish I had a good excuse. Oh no, because my heart was broken by the ending. It was just so sad, so sad that Doctor Who would never get to see what were they called again? Amy and Rory again, because of the immutable Time Lord law and
Yes.
the physical laws set in stone, set in neutrinos at the foundation of the universe, that you can't go back and see somebody again after somebody's written a book about them or something, wasn't it? Yeah. I mean, it was just heartrendingly beautiful the way it was contrived. And I use the word contrived very precisely. It's a good 45 minutes. Ending doesn't hold up, but it's all about the emotional truth, isn't it, rather than the logical truth? That's what we always say. Is there a link? Between? Yes.
Is not the Statue of Liberty tiptoeing through Manhattan only when people aren't looking at it?
Terrifying, isn't it?
Yeah.
one of those moments where you think, or I think, that everybody was afraid of telling Moffat that he may be going down a bad road.
Yeah.
It's a very metatextual plot point, that, because just like the angels only being able to move when they're not observed, that's a plot point that only makes sense when you don't think about it.
Exactly.
Extremely clever. Is there a connection? I knew I wasn't going to be very good at this bit. Oh, I'm going to take the fifth on this.
I've got a very poor connection for you.
Yes, please.
Right, which is that in both cases, I mean, so within the brain of Morbius, you've got the actual body that Solon is creating for Morbius, but you've also got the fact that this script's being hacked around by Robert Holmes out of Terrence Dicks' original. And I think what we're saying here is that Stephen Moffat has sort of chopped the ability of the Angels sort of beyond recognition in order to make it work. I don't know. I mean, that's perhaps being a little unfair because, as you say, it's a little bit closer to what they originally were to how they behaved in the middle one.
I mean, yeah. If I was going to follow through on Tim's point, the fact that it's not made of stone kind of undercuts the fact that you could use the Statue of Liberty in that sense. Isn't it made of plaster of Paris or something? Or
bronze or something like that, isn't it?
Jabalite.
I can see that Paul Cook on our feed here is agreeing with your view there, that Moffat's needs someone to give him a good telling off every now and then.
Jolly good Spanks Bottom.
Yeah, well, indeed. Very apposite. I think probably, I mean, much as I'm enjoying this particular pairing, we probably need to move on to the next one before everyone
okay
dies.
Shall I do you again?
Yeah, why not? It worked so well the first time.
I'll do you now, sir. You have got, from the Graham Williams era even, the Androids of Tara.
Oh yes.
It's paired with that classic double bill, Human Nature, the Family of Blood.
Ooh.
Okay. I could do the link first there, because I mean it could be claimed that the Androids of Tara is a takeoff of that that famous book, or is it a film? The Prisoner's End. It must be a book as well as a film.
Both. It's a film and a.
And whereas, of course, the Family of Blood and Human Nature is a takeoff of that famous book, Human Nature by Paul Cornell. But going back to the two stories, well, you've got one of very few Yorkshire born companions in the or indeed actors in the original series, Mary Tam, playing several roles in this. I mean, all of them looking like Romana, but not all of them actually being Romana. You've got, I mean, it's they've got that nice conceit, haven't they, where they find the key to time almost immediately, or the segment, but they still got to end up having an adventure along the way. Yeah, I mean, I saw it in 1978. I'm not sure that I enjoyed it enough to have looked at it again in the intervening 42 years. So you're getting the memories of an 11-year-old now. Plus, I suppose I read David Fisher's book at some point, probably in the early 80s. So there's that as well.
Richard, we should tell the listeners at this point that most of Doctor Who on TV, you either saw live in the 70s or not at all. We found this out during our dress rehearsal the other night. I won't tell you which stories Richard hasn't seen, in case one comes up and we have to wing one.
Yeah. But yeah, I think it was certainly not the worst story in the Key to Time season. Although actually, a season I seem to recall quite enjoying. There was a season that I got fed up with Doctor Who, and it wasn't that one. It was the following one. Although, having said that, I did watch City of Death, and indeed the one with the Daleks in it. So it was really only thereafter that for some reason my attention got pulled away. And what else did we have?
He's admitted it now, Tim. You were gonna hide which stories he didn't see, and now he's basically come out and said it, but never.
There's many more.
The Human Nature. So I never read the book. So I'm going to have to say that. So I'm not going to be able to give you some very finely argued reference of the two different texts. So I only ever saw the TV version, but I liked it well enough. I thought it's an interesting idea. The Doctor becomes a human and falls in love and then eventually has to give all that up. It's a little bit odd in the ending. The Doctor becomes very vindictive, and he was trying to give him a chance, he said, but now that they've overstepped the mark, that's it. They've really had it, which seems, I suppose, it's somewhat in tune with the character of Tennant's Doctor in the latest part of the era, but seems a little bit out of step in this series 3 to me. But yeah, all in all, First World War setting, creepy scarecrows. So the link between the two is I've only ever seen both of them once, and
right, and you're not allowed to use that link again.
and they're both adaptations of a book.
Does that mean Lanzarotte's out?
Have either of you got anything to add?
Is there such a thing as an anti-link? I mean, you point out that one of the interesting things about human nature is the Doctor's complete lack of compunction with the villains. They get a right good comeuppance at the end of it. Whereas in Andros of Tara, Grendel famously doesn't die, doesn't get locked up. He just jumps from the battlements and off into the sunset to twirling his moustache to exercise his villainy another day.
Do you think Chibbers was a fan of this? Because it does seem to be somewhat, in accordance with his
Which one?
plots. Well,
Tara.
all of his Tara. All of his plots end up with the baddie walking off happily into the sunset, don't they? Except the ones that don't.
I've kind of forgotten that, and if you've discussed that in depth on Something Here in 13 cast, I probably wasn't on those episodes. Because I was always on holidays, always away, or washing my hair or something. Whenever you were called upon to discuss the latest series. It's such a shame.
I'm very disappointed by your apparent apathy at that two-parter, Richard. I think it's my favourite New Who story. Oh, it's certainly my favourite New Who season, and that two-parter. Is it before or after Blink?
Yeah, it's just before. It's the beginning of the run. Those last 5 episodes, I think,
followed by the 3-part finale, which the last part I can take or leave, but followed by Utopia, and preceded by things like Gridlock, which is a perfect Doctor Who episode. I think that two-parter for me is absolutely stupendous. I think it's everything that season with that two-parter and the mix of stories. I think that's the absolute pinnacle of Doctor Who, to be honest. Combining production values and story writing and storytelling and character development, I think that two-parter is an integral part of that wonderful, wonderful season. I know some people prefer 4, but I just think it's absolutely brilliant. It's probably my go-to Doctor Who. If I had to go and watch something now, out of all of classic, all of new, I just think that would be it. So your apathy is misplaced, Richard, in my view, and therefore my opinion of you has sunken a little bit.
I'll tell you what, I think we'll have to look at it in an upcoming episode of Something Who, because that'll force me to actually watch it again.
I agree with everything Tim says about the genius of human nature in both its forms. And of course, on top of everything else, it introduces the idea of the chameleon arch, which was used to its ultimate effect in the most recent season finale.
Sorry, go on.
Wasn't it? It was brilliant. It was something at a lighthouse. It was great. Just as good as the way Paul Cornell used it. Can you cut that bit out? Oh, Dad, it's live. I've got to be more careful. I didn't say that. That wasn't me. Why am I disguised as Cyberman tonight?
I think you've been upgraded, Paul.
Nobody's commented. Yeah. I can feel my vocabulary diminishing with every passing minute. Who's next?
Well, I guess we should say that as usual, our listeners are coming up with more cutting remarks on all of these. Apart from Tim, I have to say Tim's analysis of human nature is something that I'll treasure from this live episode for many years to come. And as a reward, I'm going to have to now pick.
Mac has said Paul is a Jodie stan. I don't know what stan is.
Oh, you do. You're younger than I am, aren't you? No, you're younger than I am. You're down with the kids. It's like fan, but with a speech impediment.
I had an uncle Stan, if that's got anything to do with it. He had a car with a wind-up starter motor.
Do we have a quick round on Martha? Because Paul Cook has said, I like Martha. I feel like I'm a minority in this. What do we think about Martha?
I think he's in a minority in this.
Paul?
I think she is probably approaching a 3-dimensional character and thus watchable in televisual terms in herself. But in terms of New Who, I don't think there are any weaker, less stimulating companions, because all of the others have been so much larger than life. I'm not.
Give us your pine to Martha then, Tim.
She's fine. I find her a little bit cornball sometimes. Doctor, I'm bringing you back to Earth. I found that a little bit corny, but I don't think I don't think there's anything wrong with having a not larger than life character.
No, that's fine.
Companion, and not dwelling too much on the companions themselves, because that allows the stories to breathe. And it just so happens where we have the most muted character in Martha, who is absolutely fine, but it just so happens when we have the least concentration on the companion in a season or a season arc or a story, that we happen to have, in my opinion, what is the best season of Doctor Who. And for me, that is something I reflect on a lot, especially at the moment with seasons 11 and 12, where we have lots of noise and lots of foam about what the companions are going through. That it's just a lot of screen time that is left to trying to somehow dip into the companions' lives and draw parallels with what a young audience might be watching without conclusion, like the dyspraxia and the depression and all of that. And as a subsequent effect of that, the stories themselves are truncated and less dramatic, and the stories are sacrificed in order to try and put light on the companions. So my point about Martha is it's absolutely fine. She's perfectly fine. She's perfectly well played. Some of it's a little bit cornball, but not having Rose and not having center of attention Donna and not having all the focus being on the companion arcs allows for better storytelling. And that is why I like Martha.
Okay.
Very persuasive.
Sorry, I went on a bit then.
No, it's good. I liked her in the Cyberman two-parter, the Dalek Cyberman thing at the end of the previous season. When she was playing the cousin or something, and I just thought that she was a good enough actress, but didn't like the particular part that they'd sort of created for her in this, and the whole kind of unrequited love with the Doctor. I don't know.
Whenever people ask me why I'm not that keen on Martha, they always say, "Oh, is it the unrequited love thing with the Doctor? Is it that?" Because I guess that is the thing that most people are least keen on with her, and I say no, okay. It's not that.
Good.
That's what I say.
Tim,
hello.
The Time Warrior and The Unquiet Dead. I think you might have watched both of those.
Don't come at me with you. I think you might have watched both of those banter. I've watched everything. You haven't. Tell us about Meglos, Richard.
Oh, the world's not ready for that.
Oh, the Time Warrior. The Time Warrior. Now, the Time Warrior. The first of season 11. The introduction of the Sontarans. I'm going to talk about the Sontarans because I've been thinking about this quite a bit. Prompted by a Doctor Who show podcast about the Sontarans.
Yeah, it's good.
And my takeaway is that and this might upset people, I don't know. My takeaway is that the Time Warrior is the absolute limit of what you can do with a Sontaran. In that you've got a clone race, and they're never shown as clones. The militaristic dialogue is only really visited in this one, their introduction, and perhaps the next one, the Sontaran experiment. And then after that, they just go a bit nebulous, don't they, in what they're about? Mm-hmm. But there's there's a quite humorous, over the top militaristic dialogue about them in the Time Warrior. And indeed the Sontaran experiment, and I think it's about. I think they should have probably been, for me, a one-hit wonder. But they're physically appealing, aren't they, as a monster? And they've got traits, but I don't think they ever got them right after that, really. And I don't. I've always felt they're a bit of a Star Trek villain. There should be an army of them, and they should just be about the military. And it just doesn't seem to fit to me with the idea of Doctor Who and mystery and villains that you somehow have to figure out. And coming up across a militaristic villain isn't quite, to me, what the show is about. So I think every time they've been revisited, they've been partially welcome but failed. And indeed, that carries on into New Who. And John Pertwee has a very, very tight perm.
Oh yes. Indeed.
In the Time Warrior, doesn't he?
In the studio bit, not so much in the filmed bit.
Yeah. So that's the Time Warrior. What was the other one? Sorry.
It was the Unquiet Dead.
I really liked the Unquiet Dead. Was that that was the third story, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yes.
Of the revival. And I thought, by Jove, Doctor Who is doing the right thing here, because we'd had Rose, scene setter. We'd had The Voyage to the Future, which was quite light, but take it or leave it. And then we went back into Victoriana and a ghost story. And I thought it absolutely was one of the most important factors in getting Doctor Who back into where it should be. A scary historical, some a name-droppy historical character in there in Charles Dickens, who was played by one of the best actors since Moses, since Gielgud. And I just thought it was really splendid Doctor Who. I thought it did everything it should do. It had a great scary historical setting. It had a sci-fi explanation for the Gelf.
That foggy London streets, which everyone thinks are in Doctor Who all the time, even though they aren't.
What was that? Sorry, Paul.
Oh, dear. I spoke too quickly. It had foggy London streets, which everyone thinks is in Doctor Who all the time, even though it's basically only Talons of Weng-Chiang.
Quarries. No, absolutely first class. Is it Gatiss?
Yeah.
And probably his best story, therefore, for probably his best story. I do like it when Gatiss does Victoriana. I think I was probably in the minority that I really liked the Crimson Terror for where it sat, but I love the scene setting. I love the Victorian element. I love the charitable mission element of it. I think that's really good. I think that's obviously his strength. Mr. Sweet was a bit weak, but I enjoy the setting more than anything.
The setting in Yorkshire, you mean?
Yorkshire, yes. Yeah, Yorkshire. Yeah.
Let's raise a glass to Dame Diana Rigg.
Oh, indeed.
No, that's not. That's sentimental. I don't know why.
Okay.
Halfway through this Bailey's, I'm getting weepy.
Diana Rigg's daughter played the daughter, didn't she?
Yeah, what's her face? Yeah.
Miss Rigg.
Have you got a link? It seems almost asking too much after that lyrical performance across the two stories.
Villains Out of Time. And I think this is one of the only situations in Classic and New Who where if you take any two random stories, the only possible link is that you have a villain out of time if the Gelf are out of time.
Right.
Wow.
I so Mac on our feed here has said that both stories are about ghosts which turn out not to be ghosts.
He wins. Right. He's on. No, that means he's on next time.
Whoever he is, or she.
Oh, she's. Sorry, Mac.
Probably Scottish.
That's exceptionally poor of us, isn't it, to assume?
Can we have a Scot on? Well, it's not my podcast. Richard, would you tolerate a Scot on your podcast?
I'm half Scottish, Tim.
Would you tolerate another Scot on your podcast?
Oh, dear me.
Oh, dear. Yeah. So that's it.
So I think it's up to you now to pick one for Paul.
So I'll just go to the supercomputer.
Yep.
The laser display board.
Yeah, so what are the scores on the laser display board? Why haven't we got a Samantha as well to do all this menial work for us?
Because because that's unreconstructed.
Oh yeah, and it'll blow the budget. Timothy. Yeah.
You have story number 130.
Oh, I don't. Yes.
Which is The Five Doctors.
Oh.
The what? Five?
The Five Doctors. It's a Davison episode.
I'll rack my brains, yeah?
Yeah. And number 273.
Mm.
Very good.
Very good.
Knock, knock,
yeah.
knock, knock.
No, I got it just in time to look only mildly stupid. I think I know the script of The Five Doctors backwards. It's almost beyond criticism, isn't it? We discussed Three Doctors at length on Something Who once, or rather I did. I've got a feeling we weren't actually doing it that week, but I decided to bring it round to the Three Doctors in my usual fashion. And how it's not really an anniversary story, is it? It's just a story with another Doctor in as a guest character. Whereas this is nothing. It's astonishing how much story Terrance Dicks manages to fit in, considering the shopping list. And I know that's become a bit of a cliche, the idea of being presented with a shopping list of requirements. But this outdoes all the other shopping lists we've ever had in the programme's history. And he was the right man for the job, wasn't he? Because he is a formidable nuts and bolts man. That's what Malcolm Hulk used to call him. He didn't. That's how they.
You'd like to think he did.
I could have got away with that. That was their relationship, wasn't it? Mac at the keyboard, hammering out lines of dialogue while Terrance would walk around the room, coming up with ideas. Or possibly it was the other way around. I can't remember now. If anyone can remember that anecdote, please correct me in the comments. But you're a minute behind, so there's no point. It's fans who enjoy life and have friends, I think, will always fall back on the Five Doctors for their drinking games and their parties and their sing-alongs. I mean, if I had fan friends, I'd love to do the same. I'd love to do a quote along to the Five Doctors with a Baileys in hand. It's just joyous, isn't it?
There's not a lot of love, Paul, on the comments for the extended version, which I think is the only one you can get on DVD, isn't it?
Now, we can't say anything about that because our good friend of the Missing Episodes podcast, Paul Menezes, was responsible for re-editing the extended version.
And did a marvellous job.
What was that?
Sorry, go on.
Well, I personally thought that I'd never really understood the story until that final sequence when the Time Lord hierarchy arrive in the tomb to arrest Baritza, just too late to find out what's going on, and we see I think Chancellor Thalia come out of the transmat followed by two guards, and I always used to think, what's going on? But in the extended version, you see they walk off and another two guards come out, and then I think another four guards behind them, and the room is full of guards, and it really ups the tension and increases the clarity and dramatic heft of the story. So yeah, those extra 10 minutes, which is mostly filled with guards walking about, absolutely make it for me. So yeah, I ceremonially burnt my original off-air from The Children in Need in 1983. We got some great stuff down. I think it was, I don't know, it was only in the Southeast. We got some great Wogan stuff on that Children in Need night, which didn't make it on the original DVD. Because I think there was a northern bias among the production team of the DVD, and they only got the bits from their local BBC region. Right. It was shocking. It's all true. It's all true. What's the other story? Knock Knock. Oh, that was awful. That was something living in the woodwork, wasn't it? No, didn't like it. So,
and a connection between the two.
Who wrote Knock Knock? Was it? It was one of their guest big name writers that they brought in from another franchise, wasn't it? Does anyone know? Oh, I'm actually looking up while we're live on air how I'm professional. No, I'm not allowed to do that.
You're not Giles. Where is Giles?
He's on holiday, incredibly.
This is exactly what I feared would happen. It's one of those new episodes that I've only seen once, but it feels like I've watched it possibly a negative number of times. I literally
It's got that Belgian detective in it, hasn't it?
Oh yeah,
Is that
Poirot.
Mr. Parrot, whatever he's
Is he?
called.
Oh God.
I'm Smoky
no.
and Peak. That guy.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I've let you all down. But I could talk about the Five Doctors some more.
Yeah. No,
Thank you.
I tell you what, don't do that.
Oh, okay. Shall I quit while I'm behind? Can you cut that bit about the special edition? Oh, damn, you can't.
Paul Cook says, don't forget opening the special edition with some shots of corridors. There were some corridor shots, weren't there?
Well, I never understood the geography of the Death Zone, of the Dark Tower, of the all those corridors just outside the one room on Gallifrey.
Yeah.
Oh, can you remember? Once upon a time, Gallifrey was majestic panopticons, size of 10 Olympic swimming pools, and now it's one hairdresser's receptionist's room. But at least
we're in with a few graphic design people, Paul. Perhaps we could get them to do some sort of 3D realization of the layout of the Death Zone and all the corridors and all that sort of.
I tell you what, though, there was a cracking WAS special on the Five Doctors, which unfortunately I sold years ago, but it had all the set layouts in there for certainly for the TARDIS, and I think for also for parts of the sets in the Death Zone too. So that'd be something to track down. I'm sure that Gav's already got a copy.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but
sorry, go on.
Oh, as well as adding in deleted footage in the Five Doctors special edition, didn't they also use some alternative takes of scenes? And isn't there one big scene in the Time Lord throne room where they used an alternative take which was interrupted by Anthony Ainley farting? And the only reason they hadn't used it originally because the acting was better all across the board, but they couldn't get rid of the fart.
Right.
But Mark Ayres was able to extract it digitally from the soundtrack, which meant they could use the superior take. I think that's right. But if it's a product of my fevered imagination, I can only apologise.
How splendid. I was going to suggest that the link that I found is that not in Knock Knock there is a woman that's made of wood, and in the Five Doctors you've got some very wooden delivery of the no, not the Mind Probe line, or as we should say, no, not the Mind Probe.
Oh, good. I thought you were going to say that you have a woman encased in wood.
Yes, and Baruta encased.
You have the people who are seeking immortality encased in Jabberlight.
What of your doctor? Do you seek immortality too? He was a great actor, wasn't he? That
Yeah. That's an alternative take on the same
pantomime missing its villain that year. Well, oh dear.
Excellent. So I think we're coming
Although
up.
Spike called Cybermen, and the one that goes I love the Five Doctors.
Yeah, that's Mark Hardy, isn't it? We're coming up on sort of 10:30, but since we had all that mucking about with the feed not working, maybe we can do a sort of final lightning round for each of us, where we're a little bit quicker and we sort of
30 seconds.
Sort of rush round one just to as a bonus for our if they could consider it a bonus for those people who've hung around this long. So Paul, do you want to fire up another pairing for me, and I'll see what I can do with them.
Someone's just being personal about me on the feed, so I'm going to stop looking at it. They're doubting my missing episode discovery credentials. Sorry, what?
Another pair of
I wasn't listening.
Oh, from the Magic spreadsheet.
Number 1, The Hand of Fear.
Oh yeah.
And paired with The Girl Who Waited. I think you might have had practice run at this.
Well, The Hand of Fear. So I think it's probably known by some people that I used to work in the nuclear industry. When I was a lad, in fact, I as a student I climbed inside the pressure vessel of Hisham to one of its reactors, I forget which one, and with a bent sort of metal rod, hoiked out lots of bits of foreign material between the boiler pipes in that reactor before they'd had the fuel loaded. So, I mean, it was relatively safe. I mean, I almost fell to my death.
Oh, you're 8 foot tall.
While I was doing it, but there was no danger, at least from radiation. So I've always been a little bit worried about Bob Baker and Dave Martin's grasp on radiation and what might happen if there were some kind of, explosion or radioactive leak or something similar. It seems to be slightly less deadly in the Hand of Fear than one might imagine in real life. But that being said, it's a nice story. I mean, it's Sarah Jane's last. I was traumatized, I would say, as a young boy of about 8 or something like that, at the loss of Sarah Jane and the peremptory way in which she's thrust out of the TARDIS. But this is supposed to be a lightning round, so I suppose I better move on to The Girl Who Waited. It's very visually nice, and I do like the twin time streams and the whole idea behind it. I think the first half of it is absolutely, it's fascinating and well devised. It pulls for me a bit at the end when there's this sort of fake dilemma about old Amy and what they're going to do with her when you know that they're just going to dispatch her because they can't be bothered to have her around for the rest of the series. But I suppose that's my link then, that Sarah Jane's kicked out of the TARDIS at the end of Hand of Fear, and old Amy is left outside the TARDIS at the end of The Girl Who Waited.
Bravo.
Have you got anything to add there?
No, I'm just feeling deja vu. Didn't you do The Girl Who Waited in our test run?
You thought that was almost impossible, wouldn't you?
Yeah, I thought it was like something of spontaneity and verve that you gave it the first time round. No. On the other hand, at least this time you knew which story we were talking about. Hand of Fear is the first one I remember, it's traditional to tell people what their first Doctor Who memory is.
Yeah.
The Hand comes alive, cliffhanger, end of part 1, my first memory, and oh my God, of course you'd remember it.
Indeed.
And it's unique, really, because it's got that. I always think it's the scene that nobody ever mentions, but Glyn.
Oh yes.
What's his face ringing home to his wife and saying, "Look after the children," or "Kiss the children for me," and all that sort of stuff. It's quite a standout scene in Doctor Who, isn't it? I don't think there's anything else quite like it, and it's very
apart
unusual.
From the old guard in The Woman Who Fell to Earth. Some people really loved him with his when he's saying night night to his granddaughter before he gets summarily dispatched.
Right. Well, yeah, okay.
Yeah, but that's incredible. Oh no, no, not even gonna.
No,
but
I'm
I often criticise
well
Baker and
delivered.
Martin. I'm always criticising Baker and Martin's characters for not being. I don't want to say larger than life again, but not being big enough for Doctor Who guest characters, not really bursting off the screen, not being distinguishable, not adding anything to the texture and flavour and colour of the stories they're in. But on the other hand, they do often feel like real people, which is a plus point. Which is better, an entertaining, charismatic cipher, or somebody who feels real because they're just like somebody you might meet in the street, because they're like the people in the audience. I don't know. A very philosophical point, I think. Move on.
Excellent. So Tim, by chance, to Anthony Carroll's asked why we haven't got any missing episode stories, and by chance, your pairing is the Moonbase and Flatline.
Oh. The Moonbase. Is there any reason why the production code for the Moonbase always flashes up for me? It's HH, isn't it? A bit woolly on production codes, but the Moonbase, Morris Barry. I have a difficult relationship with the Moonbase. Really, I'm delighted to have the 2 episodes that we have, but it marks a retreat into silly science and silliness that some of season 4 especially represents. So we've come from the Underwater Menace, where there's some silly science, isn't there? There's a silly science demonstration about a little pot which explodes, demonstrating what happens if you drain away the sea or whatever it is. And then the Moonbase, they have this 22nd century dome on the moon, and the day is saved by a tray which somehow hermetically seals the dome and saves everyone's life. And the plots line with the Cybermen only randomly picking off people in the Moonbase by poisoning the sugar.
Mm.
And therefore, anyone who has sugar in their coffee is vulnerable. So watching it as a grown-up, which I allegedly am, I don't get on with the lazy storytelling and the dumbing down for children, because it shouldn't be dumbed down for children. It should give children something to aspire to understanding, rather than going down to their level. And we had the whole Polly cocktail thing as well, and that was more of the same. However, it's Cybermen on the moon, which is quite powerful. And you've got Troughton being silly, which is lovely. And that's the Moonbase. Maurice Barry conducting from his music stand. What was the other one?
Flatline.
Flatline, Riggsy.
Yeah.
I thought that was a really, really, really good premise for a story. I thought it was excellent. And I think Dr. Light stories tend to be better by virtue of there being less this is a bit of a theme, but being less focus on what is going on in the TARDIS with the companions.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought it was pretty good. I remember being grumpy about it, but I remembered why I was grumpy about it.
Blimey, you woke me up.
Absolutely fine. Apart from there's this scene where she's in a flat, sitting, I think, in like a hanging chair.
Oh yeah.
With 2-dimensional monsters coming out of the wallpaper, and she's about to lose her life, and she needs to escape because she's going to die. And then Moffat wrote in it a phone call to Danny where she pretends nothing is going on.
Oh yeah.
So, how are you? What are you doing? And it was really light and really absolutely destroyed all the tension. And I just thought, oh my God, what are you doing with this Danny Pink rubbish? It's absolutely abhorrent writing. And that absolutely trashed the episode. And so the first time I watched it, I didn't enjoy it at all. And then the second time I watched it, I sort of skipped through the phone call to Danny Pink. Yeah. And it's quite a good story in the round.
So what you've done then is sort of the opposite of the special version of the 5 Doctors. You've excised a bit that you don't like, right?
Yeah, yeah. So a good concept, a good story. I don't know who wrote it, but I liked the idea. But yeah, it was just trashed by this Danny Pink rubbish, and I didn't like the Clara Who idea. And that contributed to that as well, making her think she could be the Doctor. And a parallel between the two.
Yes. I'm going to be very cross if you say that Moonbase is a 2-dimensional story. I remember reading the Target book very early on. It was probably about the third or fourth that I'd read, and it was I really enjoyed it. So I think for me, my view on Moonbase is irrevocably shaped by the fact that I enjoyed reading that Target book, Age 7.
Yep, I couldn't agree more. That and 10th Planet, for me, they'll always be more than the sum of their parts, because the the wonderful atmosphere of the novels lives on.
Yeah.
And no matter how many times I watch the reality, it can't destroy it for me.
So what was that, Tim?
They both have the same introduction, both of those books. The Origin of the Cybermen or something.
Yeah, they do, yeah.
Paul Cook has said, Moonbase is a terrible story saved by fans for one quotable line.
Some corners of the universe, yeah, I suppose so.
Flatline, another story saved by a speech. There is your link. Stories more remembered for lines and quotes rather than the story itself.
Not wrong.
Not wrong. That's what I was thinking, but I wanted to give Paul and the feed a chance.
There's another good. The Doctor gets another powerful speech in Tomb of the Cybermen as well. There was a lot of it about at the time.
Yeah.
Something about
Jerry
the Cybermen
Davis.
seemed to encourage him to get all weighty and philosophical on us.
Yeah.
Although,
He doesn't-
Tomb of the Cybermen's a silly story, isn't it? Isn't it?
Well, it is a silly story, and yet I still enjoy it. But yeah, I mean, there's objectively, there's all sorts of reasons why I should hate it, and yet I still love it.
Yeah.
right,
Yeah.
I finished my Baileys. Go on.
Oh,
You wanted
Baileys.
to
I was
wanted a quick.
speculating on the chat feed whether it was
wasn't
the
bat milk.
milk of the Queen Bat of Androzani Major.
Damn it. I think it doubles as that. So now, if my companion is gravely injured,
Yes.
she's on her own. Right.
Yes.
So it's dark. Come on, you wanted a quick fire round,
Yes,
Richard.
so you're going to have to
I will
do.
give you
it's
a
Tim.
minute on this and no
No,
more.
isn't it? I think isn't it?
Oh, no, it's
Tim has to do
Paul.
you.
It's me wrecking up for Paul.
Yes.
Come on, Sam. Don't give me the numbers this time. I know you think it increased the tension.
Oh, no.
Just give me the production
I'll
code.
give you
instead.
these, Paul. I'll give you these. But Richard
isn't
has to go first on the classic Who story. Okay?
He
But
what?
Paul, you take over when
Oh,
Richard...
all right. Yeah, we'll do that.
All right. So I'm going to give you the numbers.
Yeah.
The first one is story 111, Meglos. And then it's 201, Midnight. Richard first on Meglos, please, and then over to Paul for Meglos and Midnight.
Okay.
Paul, that will give you a little bit of thinking time.
I remember very clearly watching all 4 episodes of The Leisure Hive. I also very clearly remember watching all 4 episodes of Full Circle. For some unaccountable reason, I have absolutely no memory whatsoever of anything happening in between those two, and I can only conclude that I must have randomly failed to watch Meglos for some reason. So all I can tell you is that it's got an alien in it that looks like a cactus, and at some point turns into Tom Baker because there's a waxwork of him, and then also it was directed by Terence Dudley, and the only reason I know that is because Hugh Turbeville mentioned it on Something Who a few episodes back. So there you go. Paul, you can tell us about it properly now.
No, I can't. If I could remember, I researched it. We did a very in-depth podcast on the whole of season 18, and the strangest thing is that all 3 participants, that was Tim, myself, and Matthew. I was pretending I couldn't remember his name. That's very cruel. Hey, hi, Matt. He's not watching. The oddest thing was that we all came to the conclusion that Meglos was not the weakest or worst, or generally our least favourite story of the season, which we all went into it assuming it would be. I went into it assuming it would be because I hadn't seen it until last year. I hadn't seen it since the time. It's famously a story that it's a hangover. It was written not for season 17, but the writers had season 17 in their heads, and they were writing Douglas Adams style, Graham Williams style comedy Who, hence the ridiculousness of the premise. And then incoming script editor Christopher Holy Bidmead took out most of the jokes, and it was so early was he in his script editorship that he hadn't realized you needed to replace them with something. So most of the episodes are about 19 minutes long, I think. I am exaggerating, so don't correct me. So it's a very strange experience. There are still some jokes in it, but he's cut out all the Doctor's funny lines, which
Right.
is an odd experience. You've got the very serious season 18 Doctor that we've just been introduced to. There's the very grave, for no particular reason, Doctor of season 18, because he hasn't even spotted the oncoming heat death of the universe yet, but somehow he's lost his joie de vivre. And yet he's walking through, not wisecracking, in the middle of all this ridiculousness and turning into a cactus, and Freddie Treves overacting. So that really is peculiar, and also has a story. Don't like religious maniacs. The elements just don't fit together. Space pirates in with flamboyant shoulder pads, cacti. Barbara Wright pretending to be a religious alien zealot. I mean, it just doesn't cohere. And yet somehow it's not my least favourite thing to watch out of season 18. That was far too long. Midnight. Ah, well, now we're talking. Yeah, I mean, I've always thought that stories that don't have a companion in offer a great opportunity to concentrate on the plotting and really get into the nuts and bolts and the meat of what Doctor's good at without all this namby-pamby emotions and stuff. I've always thought that, and I've told my theory to some of my good friends. I don't know if it's lodged with any of them. But yes, it's Russell. After writing a lot of the big episodes in the first couple of years of New Who, the tentpole ones, the ones that needed to set the tone, relaxed a bit later on, didn't he, and started giving himself the freedom to write stuff outside of his comfort zone. You could say he's also seeing if he could do a Moffat with this one, which I guess is a bit unfair. It's not just a stylistic exercise, because it conspicuously doesn't do what Moffat would have done, because it doesn't explain anything, but it is an exercise in atmosphere and lacking, I guess, the sense of that people's innate humanity will save the day that is common to most of Russell's work. It's absent here. So yes, pretty strong meat. Is there a link between the two? Yes, they begin with the letter M.
Oh.
Oh, it's gone quiet.
Yeah, I'm not
Who's
sure.
turned into a pumpkin?
Well, it's all very well for Flanagan and Allen, or whatever they're called, to tell their story where they're sat there and they just can't think what a villain would look like. And, oh, there's a cactus on the table. Let's make it a cactus in a plant pot.
Yeah, it could have been a bowl of potpourri. We should thank ourselves that.
And they're proud of this story as if it's some brilliant conceit. I'm not allowed to swear, am I?
Well,
It's,
we'll take it as read that you just have done.
It's a plant pot with a cactus in it. Flanagan and Allen.
There aren't even any songs in it. It's not up to their usual. They just weren't, unless Bidmead cut all those out as well. I bet he did, didn't he?
I think when you get in amongst it, apart from the wigs and the cactus, and Jackie Hill, whose performance is a bit odd, and the old what's her mate called? The old wise guy who knew the Doctor.
Oh, I hate stories with people who know the Doctor. That only comes in JNT.
He's rubbish as well. But apart from all of that, in terms of plotting and pace and comedy bits, it's fine.
Yeah.
It stands out in season 18, as does the State of Decay, in that it's an older story, isn't it? It's an older style story, an older style for Potter.
Tim, is it true that you have very clear memories of this, not so much the story itself, but of Tom Baker as a character, despite the fact you were only 3 months old when it was broadcast? Yeah. And have you ever wondered how that can be?
No, I haven't, Paul.
Oh,
We discussed on Monday night, listeners, that my first clear memory of Doctor Who is Adric flailing around in the, I can't remember what it's called, but the machine in Kinder. And then various firm memories from then on. But I also was very confused when I flipped open a Peter Haining book in the 80s and saw Tom Baker as Meglos, and I had full recognition of it.
I was really hoping it was going to be that you'd gone to Madame Tussauds or wherever it was. Maybe somebody suggested it was Blackpool. I think somebody would have to have been Richard. He's the only other person here.
I think it was Tim,
Oh, right.
wasn't it?
I was really hoping it was because you'd seen the waxwork at a formative age, but you don't think you did.
I don't
Not
think I
even
was at Swords by that point, but I may well have been to the Blackpool exhibition. So if Meglos was at the Blackpool exhibition, that might be an explanation for it. Or I remember it as a... Well, I was born in May 79, and the first story after I was born was Destiny of the Daleks.
Ah,
Yeah.
now you're talking.
So I must have been 1 year old or one and a bit. And I'd find it highly unlikely I would have been awake at that point and being able to recall things on the brightly coloured machine in the corner of the room. But then again, I am quite special, so...
Maybe you saw a Wookiee hole. I gather a lot of the old unneeded, redundant waxworks from Madame Tussauds end up in storage at Wookiee hole. Something to do with the cooled caves. There's a Davros down there as well. It's all true.
We established at the start, Tim, how special you are. Although, of course, Paul is every bit as special. That part may have been lost in the whole kind of technical fault debacle, but we'll see. We'll see whether that survived for posterity. But just in case, I'll make the point again.
Excellent. So,
yeah, I think we've probably tried the patience of those few diehards who've kept watching the flickering screen at very low bit rate for over an hour now. But thanks very much for listening to us warbling on. I mean, you'll be very much be the guy, the judge of whether this was a good idea or not. But I have to say that at the very least, I've quite enjoyed the free format that it's offered us to chunter on about Doctor Who for an hour or so.
No editing.
And no editing. Yeah.
Yep.
So thanks, Paul, and thanks, Tim, for your idea for this event, and thanks most of all to you very patient and slightly crazy people out there.
Oh, keep going.
You don't. No. Say that again, and we will, and then you'll be sorry. I think a different format, a tweak next time. We reduce the length of time we talk about each story by 10 seconds every time until we're down to like 10 seconds for each one. How about that? We've got 10 seconds on the Romans and the Christmas invasion.
The Romans and the Christmas invasion. Yikes!
No,
well, the Romans is brilliant. It's an excellent story, and very funny as well. It's the first particularly funny story. Christmas invasion, tea. It's all about tea, isn't it? Tea and oranges. The Doctor's revived by the smell of tea, and then the clementine's what he uses to finish off the villain. There's not really much of a connection, is there? I mean, the Doctor's hardly in the Christmas invasion. He pops up right at the very end. But then again...
And yet it's a strong story.
Yeah, Hartnell is kind of he's not really driving the plot, is he, in Romans? He's sort of standing on the side and watching, but... In fact, in Romans, I'm not sure that any of the TARDIS crew particularly drives the plot. Barbara, maybe. Ian gets to do a bit of a run around. I'm warbling now.
Just out of curiosity, I just saw what might be next.
Oh, yes.
And we can't get into it because it would actually be a really good one. Earthshock. and World Enough and Time.
Ah. Oh, well,
But anyway, we're not doing anymore.
no. Good night, everybody. I apologise unreservedly.
What for everything?
Yeah, everything. Yeah.
Okay.
Anyone.
Yeah. It's
All the time.
It's. I tell you what we haven't yet done, and what we
Did
must.
you write a closing speech? Yes.
No, I didn't write a closing speech.
Oh.
But I've got the ukulele kazoo.
Yeah.
And you can't hear it.
Is it playing now?
It is playing.
I can't. Oh, yes, I can hear it.
That's it. It's gone.
Yeah, well, I was just carrying on the sort of rhythmical emotion of it.
Cheers.
Thanks, Paul. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, listeners. Thanks, Mac. Thanks, Paul Cook. Cheers, Anthony. Cheers, Julian.
Yeah. Splendid.
I think I know who Mac is.
Do you?